You can feel the season before it even arrives. It starts quietly, in the way the air shifts when November settles in. Cooler, sharper, carrying that familiar scent of cinnamon, nutmeg, and something you can never quite name but somehow recognize instantly. Thanksgiving has a way of entering the body before the mind, stirring memories you thought were safely tucked away in the back corners of your heart. And then, the day arrives. The house warms up in that specific holiday way, a heat created not just by the oven, but by the presence of people, the noise, the movement. There's light all around you, from candles, from windows, from the TV playing football in the background. You hear laughter. You hear your name being called from the kitchen. You feel hands brushing past you as dishes are carried to the table. On the surface, everything is exactly as society promised this holiday should be. Full, bright, overflowing with gratitude. Yet, even in all that fullness, something inside you tightens. It's small at first, a little sting beneath the ribs, a glance at your phone, a random memory that slips under your guard, a name that floats up from a place you didn't invite it from. And then, suddenly, the ache is there, real, physical, impossible to ignore. You miss someone you shouldn't miss, someone who, by every measure of logic, does not deserve the spotlight of your heart today. This is where confusion begins, the kind that doesn't announce itself loudly, but seeps in through cracks. You look around at the people near you, family, friends, faces you've known forever, and you wonder why none of this warmth seems to touch the cold place inside you. You wonder why being surrounded by love only makes the absence of one particular person feel sharper, heavier, more humiliating. Shame is powerful on holidays. It doesn't appear as a loud accusation, but a quiet whisper. Why are you the only one who can't just enjoy the day? It tells you that everyone else has it together. Everyone else is living the version of Thanksgiving the world advertises. Stable relationships, uncomplicated families, tidy emotional histories. Shame convinces you that the struggle you're having isn't just painful, it's a personal failure. And then anger sneaks in too. Anger at yourself for still being affected. Anger at them for leaving such a mark. Anger at a holiday that seems designed to expose the softest parts of your heart. Anger that you can't simply turn off the loneliness like flipping a switch. The anger doesn't stay long. It rarely does. But it scorches enough to remind you that beneath all your growth, there are still wounds that sting when touched. But there's also another feeling, gentler and harder to admit. Longing. A longing not for the whole person, but for fragments of moments, versions of yourself that once existed in their presence. Maybe it was the way they looked at you across a crowded room. Maybe it was the way you felt understood in a way no one else seemed capable of. Maybe it was simply the comfort of having someone who felt like an anchor when life around you felt too loud. And on a day that amplifies every desire for connection, those memories glow brighter than they should. What makes Thanksgiving especially potent is the illusion it creates. The illusion that today is a checkpoint for your life, a day where you measure how loved you are, how fulfilled, how stable, how accompanied. Even if you don't consciously subscribe to it, your body does. It absorbs the messages pumped into the culture for decades. This is the day for gratitude, togetherness, tradition, belonging. And when your reality doesn't match the script, it doesn't matter how strong you are. The collision between expectation and truth hurts. The mind behaves strangely when confronted with a discrepancy this sharp. It starts rummaging through old memories, trying to assemble something that feels like comfort. It pulls out scenes from past Thanksgivings, even the dysfunctional ones, and edits them until they look gentler than they ever were. It softens arguments, polishes disappointments, brightens moments that were only half happy in real time. Nostalgia is a crafty architect. It builds emotional illusions with walls strong enough to lean on. And so you lean. Not because you're weak, And not because you want that person back, but because the present moment is overwhelming. Your nervous system is overloaded with sensory cues, familiar smells, familiar sounds, familiar rituals, and each one presses on a bruise you didn't realize was still tender. The heart does not process holidays the way the calendar does. It processes them the way memory does. And memory can be merciless. There's a truth hidden inside this discomfort, though it's hard to see it in the moment. What you're feeling isn't insanity, and it isn't regression. It's not a sign that you're still tied to the past in the way you fear. It's a sign that your emotional system is responding exactly as it was designed to respond. Seeking connection on a day that glorifies it. Seeking safety in memories when the present feels too exposed. Seeking something familiar when everything around you insists on perfection. Somewhere inside the noise and the clatter and the bright cheer, your body is trying to tell you a story. A story about loneliness disguised as longing. A story about expectations that don't match your real life. A story about the version of love you once accepted because you didn't yet know you deserved better. Your heart isn't reaching backward because it wants to return. It's reaching backward because it's searching for something you've outgrown. The true trigger of Thanksgiving isn't the holiday itself. It's the quiet emotional math your mind does when you're surrounded by symbols of belonging. It's the way the day shines a spotlight on everything you no longer have, everything you left behind, everything you're still healing from. And beneath all of that, beneath the grief, the longing, the anger, the sadness, there is something resilient trying to surface. The part of you that knows this ache is meaningful. The part that understands you aren't broken. The part that senses there is more to this feeling than missing the wrong person. The day may stir old ghosts, but the fact that you feel this deeply says something important. You're still alive to your own humanity, still capable of wanting connection, still capable of healing, still capable of moving toward a future where this ache won't define you. When the noise fades tonight, and you finally find a quiet corner to breathe, something inside you might recognize a small, steady truth, that this swelling ache is not a step backward, but the first gentle pulse of a heart learning how to want something healthier than it has ever wanted before. There's a strange thing that happens when the world smells like rosemary and butter, when the house is warm and familiar, when everyone is calling each other family, even if the word feels a little fragile. Your mind, almost without asking your permission, begins stitching together moments from your past and laying them gently at your feet. It happens so quietly, so naturally, that you almost don't notice how far back you've traveled until you're already standing knee-deep in memories you didn't plan to revisit. Thanksgiving has a way of pulling you into its time warp. It's not just about remembering, it's about reliving. The senses become too vivid, too precise. A single scent in the kitchen feels like a doorway. The clatter of cutlery hits your chest the same way it did years ago. Even the light in the room can look like a shade you've seen before, as if the past slipped its fingers through the blinds and tilted them just enough to remind you of what used to be. This is the first layer of the nostalgia trap, the emotional déjà vu. It creeps in slowly, wrapping itself around the moment, smoothing its edges until your heart begins to soften in ways your mind had sworn you would never allow again. Suddenly, someone who once made you cry now appears in your mind as a warm silhouette. Someone who was wrong for you now feels like a missing piece. Someone who once drained you suddenly seems like they filled you. Memory is not a camera, it's a painter, and on holidays, it chooses only the softest brushes. There's a kind of sadness inside this, the gentle sadness that feels almost comforting. You're not grieving the person, you're grieving the version of yourself who once believed in something with all her heart. That girl is still inside you, still clinging to the idealized snapshots your brain keeps polishing. She remembers the way he once placed his hand on your back at a family gathering, how it steadied you when you felt nervous. She remembers the inside jokes whispered during dessert, the stolen glances across the room, the feeling of being chosen in a crowd. Those are the moments nostalgia keeps. Everything else gets trimmed away like unwanted fat. But longing has a way of creating its own illusions. When you're sitting at a Thanksgiving table trying to act normal, the mind goes searching for relief, and the past, even the painful past, becomes a tempting place to hide. It's not because it was beautiful. It's because it's known. It's mapped territory. You recognize the emotional landscape, even if some parts of it were dangerous. Your heart, for a split moment, decides that predictable hurt is easier than today's loneliness. There's a quiet anger buried in this realization. Anger at how easily your brain rewrites history. Anger at the way your heart betrays your logic. Anger at how unfair it feels that the most generous memories belong to people who were never generous with your heart in the first place. It feels like being tricked by your own body, betrayed by the very system that was supposed to protect you. Yet at the same time, there's a faint sense of comfort in remembering. A tiny spark of joy in recalling the laughter, the warmth, the familiarity. It's a complicated joy, the kind that leaves a bruise when it lands. You smile at the memory, and then immediately regret the softness of that smile. You feel guilty for missing someone who didn't know how to love you right. You feel foolish for craving something that once broke you. These conflicting emotions twine together until you don't know whether you want to cry or laugh or disappear into the noise of the holiday. But the deeper truth of nostalgia is rarely about the person. It's about the ritual. It's about tradition. It's about the invisible script that your psyche once followed so effortlessly. Maybe you always spent the morning of Thanksgiving cooking while he sat nearby, pretending to help. Maybe he carved the turkey every year, even though he always complained about it. Maybe he'd steal a taste of mashed potatoes when he thought no one was watching, then grin at you like a mischievous child caught in the act. None of these moments are remarkable on their own, but together, they create the illusion of a shared life. And that illusion is what the heart misses most. What hurts isn't the fact that he's gone. What hurts is that the rituals stayed, and he didn't. The parade still plays on TV, but the place where he once sat is empty. The holiday lights still hum softly against the ceiling, but the warmth you once projected onto him refuses to appear. You're not just grieving a person. You're grieving the story you once lived inside, the one your brain still remembers as home. Loneliness deepens when the world around you insists on pretending nothing has changed. Everyone keeps moving, cooking, chatting, laughing, as if the hole inside your chest isn't swallowing half the room. That invisible pressure makes nostalgia feel like the only safe escape. But all it really does is stretch the ache across your ribcage until it feels like part of you. Something inside you knows the memory isn't real. Not fully. Not truthfully. But memories don't need to be true to feel convincing. They just need to be familiar. And so your mind keeps reaching backward, trying to rebuild something that wasn't as whole as you once believed. It keeps trying to recover the safety that never truly existed. It keeps trying to feel the future you once imagined with someone who was never capable of giving it. There is innocence in this instinct, the part of you still capable of hope. There is grief woven into it, the part of you mourning the version of yourself that once believed in a softer world. There is anger simmering beneath it, the part of you that knows you deserved better. There is fear whispering through it, the part of you terrified of facing the holiday without a familiar anchor. And beneath all of that, there is something brave rising slowly, learning to separate the memory from the truth. Thanksgiving might drag you backward for a moment, but it cannot keep you there. Even as nostalgia tugs at you, there is a quieter awareness emerging, a recognition that missing someone is not the same as wanting them back. Missing someone is simply the echo of an old emotional habit, softened by time, sharpened by holiday lights, and ultimately destined to fade when your heart learns how to build something new. There's a heaviness that settles over the holiday table long before anyone actually sits down. It isn't the weight of the food or the chatter or the traditions. It's the invisible pressure of what this day is supposed to look like. The unspoken rules of Thanksgiving float through every home like a script everyone seems to know by heart. Warmth, togetherness, family, stability, partnership, gratitude. It's almost theatrical, the way people step into their roles as if cameras were rolling. And even if you tell yourself you don't buy into any of it, the performance still finds a way under your skin. The world has been teaching you this script since childhood. The commercials that show big families gathering without a single strange smile. The movies where arguments are magically resolved just before dinner is served. The glossy Instagram photos that appear hours before you even get out of bed, showing perfect tablescapes, perfect marriages, perfect kids. Somehow, everyone seems to have the life you were supposed to have by now. And when you don't, the day becomes a mirror that reflects back everything you're afraid is lacking. That mirror is cruel. It doesn't show your strength, your growth, your resilience. It only magnifies the empty spaces. The seat that used to be filled. The relationship that didn't survive. The family bond that frayed until it broke. The picture you imagined for your life smiling at a dinner you cooked with someone you loved never quite materialized. And Thanksgiving highlights the absence like a bright, humiliating spotlight. At first, you try to ignore it. You tell yourself you're fine. You tell yourself you're just tired. You tell yourself nobody notices the way your chest tightens when a couple walks by holding hands as they bring wine into the house. But your body betrays you, sending tiny tremors of fear and longing through your veins. Your heart beats too loudly, too insistently, like it's trying to warn you of something. Maybe it's loneliness. Maybe it's loss. Maybe it's the simple truth that you wanted everything this day is supposed to represent, even if you no longer want the person you once hoped to share it with. A kind of anger flickers beneath that realization. Anger at the culture that sells you a fantasy and punishes you for not living inside it. Anger at the people who told you that happiness looks like having someone, anyone, beside you during the holidays. Anger at the pressure placed onto women to be the glue of their families, the caretakers of emotional peace, the ones who smile even when something inside them is breaking. Anger that you're expected to carry the weight of tradition while quietly swallowing your own grief. Because while others get to simply show up, you are the one who smooths the edges. You are the one who shifts the conversation when it becomes tense. You are the one who checks on your mother in the kitchen, makes sure the cousins aren't arguing, and remembers which dessert your uncle likes. You are the one people rely on to make the day feel warm, even when warmth is the last thing you feel. It's this emotional labor, this invisible work, that becomes the most exhausting part of the holiday. You're expected to hold everyone together while something inside you feels like it's coming undone. And when you're stretched that thin, it makes perfect sense that your mind drifts to the people who once made the day feel easier. Even if they weren't good for you, even if the relationship wasn't healthy, they served a role. They filled space. They carried some weight. They shielded you from the probing questions, from the pitying glances, from the pressure of being the single, independent one who must be so strong. Your mind doesn't long for them because of who they were. It longs for the version of you that didn't have to do all of this alone. So when a relative leans across the table and asks, "Are you seeing anyone yet?" Their voice may be calm, curious, innocent. But to you, it feels like a knife slipped beneath your ribs. It digs into wounds you've quietly carried all year. And suddenly you're 13 again, sitting at a family gathering where adults measure your worth by how well you match the script they worship. Questions like these don't just hurt. They ignite fear. Fear that you're behind. Fear that you're failing. Fear that everyone sees something broken in you that you've tried so hard to hide. And when that fear rises, the heart clings to anything that once made you feel safe, even if that safety was an illusion. What's even more painful is the silence. The silence that follows when people look at you with sympathy or curiosity, or worse, confusion, waiting for you to justify your life choices. The silence that forces you to sit with your own doubts. The silence that makes you wonder whether losing that relationship, no matter how toxic it was, has left you permanently exposed. In that silence, memories become louder. The past becomes warmer. The wrong person becomes easier to imagine at your side. Not because they belong there, but because your heart is desperate for a shield, a buffer, a partner to stand between you and the judgment that thickens the air like humidity. Thanksgiving doesn't make you miss them out of love. It makes you miss them out of survival. And there's something deeply human in that. Something tender, something honest. A longing not to be perfect, not to be admired, but simply not to be alone in a moment when the entire world is telling you that you should be part of a pair. So if your heart aches today, it isn't weakness. It isn't regression. It isn't evidence that you made a mistake. It's the natural response of a soul trying to navigate a holiday built on expectations you didn't agree to, carrying emotional burdens no one sees, while facing questions you never asked for. It's the natural ache of someone who is learning to rewrite the script on her own terms, slowly, bravely, and with far more strength than anyone at that table will ever understand. There's a moment, usually quiet and unnoticed by anyone around you, when something inside your chest drops. It's small at first, almost like a vibration under the skin, a shift you can't quite identify. But your body feels it before your mind does. Your breath catches a little. Your heart beats too hard against the inside of your ribs. It feels like grief, but also like hunger. Like your body is searching for someone it believes should be here, even though your mind has already let them go. This is the chemistry of longing, the part no one talks about because it sounds too primal, too raw, too inconvenient. But it's the part that makes missing the wrong person feel so real, so physical, so inescapable. Your body is wired to reach for connection, not metaphorically, literally. Your nervous system records touch, tone, routine, warmth. It memorizes the shape of a familiar presence the way a shoreline memorizes the tide. And when that presence disappears, your body doesn't update immediately. It keeps reaching for what's no longer there, like a phantom limb still aching long after it's gone. There's an ache in this truth that feels unfair. You can make all the right decisions. You can leave the relationship that broke your spirit. You can heal, rebuild, outgrow, rise. And still, your nervous system will whisper his name into your bloodstream on a day like today, simply because it remembers him as a source of comfort. Not because he was, but because, at one point, he felt familiar. And your body clings to familiarity the way a child clings to a nightlight. It doesn't help that the break from a relationship triggers the same parts of the brain activated during substance withdrawal. The dopamine loops that once fired when he texted you, touched you, or simply walked into a room, suddenly shut down. Thanksgiving, with all its emotional weight and sensory overload, pushes those dormant circuits awake again. A holiday built on connection reactivates the places in your brain that once treated him as a source of safety. And the absence of that dopamine feels like a hollow echo that nothing on the table can fill. That emptiness isn't emotional weakness. It's biology calling out for what it used to know. But the craving isn't just chemical. It's psychological. Humans have a deep need to be witnessed, to have their inner world seen by someone who understands it without explanation. For a time, he was that witness. Even if the relationship was turbulent, even if he didn't always show up, there were moments when he looked at you in a way that made you feel undeniably real. Those moments matter to the brain. They become anchors in a world that moves too fast. So when you sit at a Thanksgiving table, surrounded by noise and conversation that somehow makes you feel more invisible instead of less, your mind reaches for the last person who made you feel seen. Not because they were the right person, but because your psyche is trying to retrieve a mirror that once reflected you clearly. There is a sadness in this longing, soft and heavy, like a thick blanket pulled over the heart. A sadness that whispers, "At least he understood me." And hovering beneath that sadness is fear. The fear that maybe no one else will ever see you that way again. Fear is powerful. It convinces you to rewrite the past. It convinces you to cling to connections that once hurt you. It convinces you that loneliness is evidence of your brokenness, instead of what it truly is, evidence of your humanity. Even joy is tangled in this longing. A confusing kind of joy that comes from remembering the good moments, the ones untouched by conflict or disappointment. The laughter you once shared, the warmth of an arm around your waist, the quiet conversations that made the rest of the world feel far away. These memories shine brighter during the holidays, like ornaments pulled out of storage and polished without intention. But joy can be misleading. Just because something once made you happy doesn't mean it was healthy. Just because a memory glows doesn't mean the relationship ever truly did. Then there is anger. Deep, pulsing anger. Anger that your body still reacts to someone who didn't know how to love you. Anger that holiday rituals can hijack your emotional equilibrium so easily. Anger that biology isn't loyal to the lessons you've learned. Anger that your heart keeps calling out to a ghost. Sometimes the anger turns inward. You start blaming yourself for the ache, for the memories, for the longing. But self-blame only deepens the wound. It hides the truth that longing is not a sign that you should return to someone who hurt you. It's a sign that you are wired for connection, and that wiring doesn't switch off just because a relationship ends. There's another layer to this, one that sits deeper than memory or habit. The longing isn't always for him. Sometimes the longing is for the version of yourself you were with him, the hopeful version, the soft version, the version that believed in a certain kind of future. That woman still lives inside you. She's grieving a story she didn't get to finish, and holidays are the moments when her grief rises to the surface. But grief is not a call to go backward. It is the sign of someone growing beyond what once limited her. Even in the middle of this ache, something in you is shifting. Something steady. Something brave. Something that recognizes the difference between craving and truth. Between memory and reality. Between what your body remembers and what your soul actually deserves. Longing is not a verdict. It's not destiny. It's not a compass pointing you back to him. It's simply the echo of old chemistry, old comfort, old stories. It feels strong because you are human. It feels painful because you are healing. It feels confusing because you are becoming someone new. When you understand the biology behind the ache loses some of its power. It becomes less of a monster and more of a messenger. A reminder that you were built for connection, and that the connection you truly want, the one that nourishes, steadies, strengthens, has nothing to do with the person your nervous system still remembers. The longing will pass, the chemistry will reset, and one day, your body will learn a new name for safety, a new presence, a new calm. A new kind of love that doesn't leave you aching on holidays. You are not weak for feeling this. You are human, and your healing is already unfolding beneath the ache. There comes a moment, usually late in the evening, when the dishes are stacked and the noise has thinned to a dull hum, when something inside you finally exhales. It's the quiet after the performance, after the emotional labor, after the smiling through it, after the weight of a holiday designed to remind you of everything you've lost. The world calms down, and for the first time all day, you can hear yourself. And what you hear isn't as chaotic as you feared. It's not the echo of his name. It's not the sharp sting of longing. It's something softer, something steadier, something that feels like the beginning of truth. You start to realize the ache you've been carrying doesn't belong to him. It belongs to you, to the parts of you that were never nurtured, to the versions of yourself that were never witnessed the way you deserved, to the pieces of your heart that learned to settle for almost love because real love once felt too far away. There's a tenderness in admitting this, a sadness too, because it means the person you thought you were missing was never the source of your healing, only the placeholder for needs you hadn't learned how to name yet. Needs that return on days like this, not to torment you, but to ask for your attention. The longing wasn't a sign to go back, it was a sign to go inward. It makes sense that the ache feels so physical. Your heart isn't grieving a person, it's grieving a connection you never fully had. It's grieving the comfort you wanted, the presence you hoped for, the future you quietly built in your mind, one that collapsed long before either of you admitted it. There's anger in that realization, the sharp kind that bites at the back of the throat. Anger that you spent years convincing yourself that crumbs were a feast. Anger that society pushed you toward a version of love that made you feel small. Anger that your tenderest moments were given to someone who didn't know how to hold them. But anger, when understood, can be a compass. It tells you what you will no longer tolerate. It tells you where your boundaries are being born. It tells you that the ache you feel now is the ache of a woman growing out of an old skin. And beneath the anger sits something almost hopeful. A quiet sense of possibility that feels like standing on the edge of new land. You realize that longing is not proof that you need him. It's proof that you are capable of deep connection. It means your heart hasn't hardened. It means you still want to love and be loved. It means the part of you that aches is the same part that will someday open. But it won't open in the same direction. There's a moment when you look around the dim room, maybe at a candle burning low, Maybe at the shadows on the wall, maybe at your own tired reflection in a window, and you understand something you didn't understand this morning. You understand that the ache is not a punishment. It's information. It's your inner world tapping you on the shoulder, asking for the things you used to outsource to someone else. If you miss tradition, it's because your soul is asking for rituals that actually feel like home. If you miss validation, it's because your heart is ready to learn how to witness itself with the tenderness it once begged from others. If you miss connection, it's because connection is part of your wiring, and you're allowed to want it without shame. For the first time, the ache begins to shift shape. It becomes less like a wound and more like a doorway. Less like an emptiness and more like empty space you are allowed to fill with something of your choosing. Something that belongs to you. Something that isn't built on the fragile scaffolding of someone else's approval. You can feel fear resisting this truth. Fear always resists growth. It whispers that you're better off with the familiar pain than the unfamiliar hope. It tells you that new traditions won't feel the same, that loneliness will swallow you, that healing is too slow. But fear forgets that you've survived far worse than this. Fear forgets that you've already carried yourself through rupture, through endings, through nights that felt endless. And now, here you are, still breathing, still open, still capable of tenderness. There's an unexpected sense of calm that arrives when you accept that holidays don't have to look like the ones you grew up with. They don't have to match the glossy pictures or the warm fantasies in your mind. They don't even have to include the people you once thought were indispensable. They only have to feel true. They only have to honor who you are becoming. You begin to imagine the smallest rituals, a walk in the cold air in the morning, your favorite music playing as you cook, a text to someone who feels safe, a moment alone before dinner where you place a hand on your own heart and whisper, "I'm here." These rituals don't replace anything. They root you. They anchor you. They remind you that connection begins with the way you show up for yourself. That quiet realization carries a strange kind of joy, the soft kind that feels like a returning. A joy not dependent on anyone, not fragile, not borrowed. A joy that grows from the inside, slowly, like light under a closed door. And even though grief still lingers, because grief doesn't disappear just because you understand it, you start to see it differently. It stops feeling like a chain and starts feeling like a bridge. It connects the woman you were with the woman you're becoming. It shows you the path between them. It shows you that the ache was never meant to drag you backward. It was meant to guide you forward. Tonight, when the holiday finally falls quiet, you might step outside for a breath of cold air, and the sky will stretch black and wide above you. And maybe, for the first time all day, your heart will feel spacious instead of hollow. You'll realize that the longing you carried wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a sign that you're alive, that you're human, that you're ready to build something real. The wrong person may have awakened the ache, but the ache is yours now, and it's pointing you toward a life where you don't have to miss what hurts you. A life where connection is nourishing. A life where love is steady. A life where you finally belong to yourself. And that is the kind of home no holiday can take away from you.